She got out of the crowd. It's 1:30, so we're going to begin Education Policy Committee. I want to welcome everybody to our first meeting for the 2024 session. I want to remind you that you need to silence your cell phones so that we don't get interrupted. I want to remind the committee that we actually have subcommittees for higher ed and for K-12. And many of you have mentioned some of the legislation you're working on, and it might be a good tool to use as you work through some of that legislation to work on that subcommittee. So I want you to keep that in mind as well. We are going to try, was really requested in the off season to have more information. And so we are going to try to work in more information about legislation that we discuss, and that will actually begin today at the end of our meeting. So at this time, I would like to call on Representative Fincher to open us in prayer.
Father, we thank you for all that have gathered here today. Watch over us, be with us, and let us have open minds and clear minds to try to do that which is right. Let us always keep in mind that we are here to provide the very best educational opportunities for the young men and young women of the state. And that is what we're charged with. Watch over us, guide us, and protect us. These things we ask in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you very much. I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative Collins.
Here.
Representative Baker. Representative Drummond. Representative Daniels. Representative DuBose. Representative Estes. Here. Representative Fincher. Here. Representative Gidley. Here. Representative Gray. Representative Holk Jones. Representative Morris. Representative Paramore. Here. Representative Pascal. Representative Smith. Here. Representative Woods. A quorum is present.
Thank you very much. We're going to get right into it. We'll call House Bill 95 with Representative Stubbs.
Thank you, committee and Madam Chairwoman. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today about HB 95. This bill and its construct and the purpose is to allow students who are participating in a full-time virtual student capacity within the State Department of Education to take state-required assessments using remote testing. In the bill, you'll find that there are some specific details with relation to the remote testing and what that entails. I'd like to remind you that most of these students who are engaged in these school programs are in the virtual program potentially because of challenges that they had in a school environment, whether it be social anxiety or other issues that they may be dealing with. And so they do their work at home, and currently they are then required, when a state assessment comes about, they are required to travel to a sanctioned location where they will then take a test among many other students. It may be at a hotel, or it could be another public building that has been leased out for that purpose. You may have received an email with a map, but you can see where the students are and where those testing centers are located throughout the state. This would certainly remedy that. Also, it will allow the students to perform in a better capacity because they're taking the tests in the environment that they're doing all of their other schoolwork in, not being transported somewhere in an environment they're not familiar with and then being asked to do their very best on a state assessment. We have listed in the bill specific details on what technology is required. The acquisition of the technology, the laptop, the camera for the virtual proctor, all of those things are done at the expense of the student or family or the school, but not from the state. It does require a camera that will monitor that student. I think there are plenty of safeguards in place to ensure that the right student is taking the right test at the specified time. I can attest I have a Series 7 license, which is for financial advising, regulated by FINRA, and I took my test in my living room with the same virtual proctor system that is being used here. The technology is vetted. It is being used by more and more professional organizations for licensing throughout the country. It's used in higher ed. So with that, we do have an amendment that will be brought with regards to a couple of things, one being higher education being excluded from this particular bill. They have their own ways of doing virtual testing. They did not want to be incorporated in this. And then it also excludes the ACT, which is used at the state level as an assessment that the state uses for juniors. ACT is not equipped to do this, and so we're certainly willing to remove that for the time being, but we do have in there that if and when that capability is available, then it would be eligible. So,
Thank you, Representative. Let's go ahead and get everything on the table. Representative Paramore.
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, I have an amendment to the bill, please. And it's replace lines 22 through 23 on page 1 with the following: browser remote testing to specify the conditions for administering the assessments and to exempt public institutions of higher education from this act. Also on page 1, line 25, replace section 1A, any virtual school or program operating in, just that specific line. And then on page 2, line 54, with assessment proctor, this section shall not apply to either of the following: public institutions of higher education and college readiness or workforce readiness assessments provided by a national college and career readiness assessment provider until those assessments are available via remote access.
Okay, we have a motion to amend the bill. Do I hear a second? Second by Representative Baker. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The bill is amended. Is there any discussion now or questions for the sponsor on the legislation? Representative Estes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to clarify one point. I've read through this several times. I'm just trying to get some, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, clarification on, would this apply to any student? Or is it just to those that you referenced earlier that might have some type of special need or need just?
No, thank you. I appreciate that question, and I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize we have Stride here along with the Alabama Virtual Academy and Destinations Academy, which are two institutions in the state of Alabama recognized by the Department of Education who offer these virtual programs. And so this is something that those entities, those schools will choose to participate in or offer to all of their students, not students with specific challenges, but it will be to all the students in the virtual school program. So, but each virtual school in itself, they can decide among themselves. This is just enabling them to do this if they choose to implement it among all of the students in their program.
So a local board of education would have to vote to approve it for students within their system participate? Or?
No, so if a local school system has their own virtual school program within their system, then they would have the ability to either adopt this as something that they do or choose not to do it. What I'd remind all of us of is, so if our local school system has a virtual school within it, most of the students in that local school system, virtual school, live close because they may have illness and they may have gone to the middle school and now they're at home for a period of time. So they live close. So them traveling for testing or something like that isn't nearly as cumbersome as some of these programs which have students statewide.
Any other questions? Representative Gidley?
Yes. So let me understand here, and I think maybe clarify a little more, is that the students that are in the virtual program, now, rather than be able to take that test in a setting that they're familiar with, they have to travel to somewhere where there's a location where all these students come together and there's a proctor to give that test. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is currently the way it is done.
This basically would only give them the opportunity through the current technology to be able to take that testing in their environment they're familiar with at home without the expense of having to travel and be in an unfamiliar environment. That's pretty much the gist. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
That is.
Any other questions? Do I hear a motion?
Commissioner Collins.
Oh, Representative Fincher.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
How many total virtual schools are there and the enrollment in the state? I take it this goes from first grade through the 12th grade. We're excluding colleges, I noticed.
Yes, that is correct. So we have 2 virtual schools that are statewide. We have destinations, 3, excuse me. And maybe they can reference if you don't mind, they can tell us the student enrollment numbers.
Okay.
We can speak for the managed schools, the company managed schools. There are 3, Eufaula, Chickasaw, and I believe Limestone. So the total enrollment for all 3 is somewhere around 6,200 total. No, I'm sorry, 13,000 total, 66 per.
Okay.
As far as, Ms. Finch, if you remember in 2014, I think it was, you passed a bill requiring high school to have an option
Right.
for online school. And so I don't know where that is, but I do know that those 3 exist. Competitor of Stride and Stride,
Yeah.
between them have 3 schools.
And they are statewide in
Right.
their enrollment.
Those 3 are statewide.
Okay.
That we know of.
All right. And in smaller schools?
Let me make sure I understand your question.
I mean, you say these are large and have members, have
these are-
students all over the state.
These are statewide schools.
Right.
And
Are there smaller pockets that have
well, I'm pretty unqualified to answer for every school district in the
Okay.
state, but I can tell you that the Eufaula City School System and the Chickasaw City School System have an open enrollment resolution that their board passed, so they take statewide
Right.
virtual students. But as far as a local district that has a local virtual
school?
program or LEA, I'm sure there are a lot of those, and I just can't answer for the rest
Okay.
of them.
Thank you.
I would imagine that most of those systems have their own policies on that, kind of like Representative Estes was talking about.
I can speak to Elmore County Board of Education, which is where I live. They have EDGE, which is a virtual school program that is governed by and within the Elmore County Board of Education. And they, like these institutions, would have the ability to either adopt and choose to do this or not. But I would say that most of the students that they have live within probably 15 miles.
In Elmore
20 miles
County
of
or
Elmore.
around
Yes.
Elmore County? Okay.
Any other questions? Do you hear a motion? We have a motion to give the bill a favorable report by Representative Pascal and as amended. Do I hear a second? Second by Representative Fincher. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill's given a favorable report.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next, we're going to call up House Bill 113 by Representative Warren, who prays that this is her last time to present this legislation.
Good afternoon, members. You know, like I said, I just don't give up. I keep on fighting and keep on fighting because this is a fight for those who can't fight for themselves, and in an educational arena where we need to make sure that we do all we can do to give a solid foundation. But I'm back again this session with our first grade readiness bill. What this bill is basically trying to make sure that when a student enters the first grade, they're ready for the first grade. If a student has not attended pre-K or kindergarten, can you imagine sitting in a classroom where they expect it to be in order? They have to raise their hands. They have to ask to go to the bathroom. They have to go and eat lunch in line. Who's never done that? Just the trauma that student is going through. So what we're doing here for all kids who have not attended kindergarten, we're asking that the school system give them assessment, and this assessment is just for basic skills. It's not really the academic knowledge, it's just the basic skills to see if they are ready for first grade. I've talked to several superintendents, I've talked to parents, I've talked to teachers, and I talked to one teacher, and she told me, she said one of the most painful things she had in teaching first grade was she had to repeat kids in first grade. She said that to her is not what she really signed up for being in education, but that's what she had to do. And as you know, many of our kids have to wait an entire year because when they're born after September 1st now, we changed it. Well, for kindergarten, it's still the same. So what we have in this bill is a provision for parents who have children that will be 5 by December the 31st. With the permission of the parent and the school board, those students can be admitted to kindergarten. As a matter of fact, I had my goddaughter call me last week, and she was all upset and disturbed because her son, I think, was born like September the 6th or 7th. And she said, Auntie, I'm going to have to keep him out of school a whole year? So this is why that provision is in there. And a lot of have asked me, well, that's too young. But what I've heard from superintendents, and this is what's actually going on now, parents are either changing the birth certificates or they're putting the kids in a private school for one day. So that student is classified as a transfer. Then they take them out and put them in a public school kindergarten class. So basically that's it. I'm just hoping and praying that we can, and I just want to thank this committee and thank my House representatives, because every time I presented this bill, it's been cleared, and it gets caught up in the Senate by one person. So hopefully this year the Senate is going to help me make sure that doesn't happen.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Representative. I actually have 2 different things that my local area did about is your child ready for kindergarten. One's in Spanish and one's in English. But just so you know kind of that test, I want you to hear, they know their full name. They know their age. They're beginning to learn their birth date. They can hold a book and turn pages one at a time. I mean, it's not a test like you're thinking a test. It's a skill-driven thing, and you're welcome to look at this. It's not mandatory kindergarten. It's just saying that if your child starts school as a 6-year-old, that they might need to start in kindergarten and not first grade. Are there any questions for the sponsor? Well, we have talked about this bill a long time, so that might be good. Do I hear a motion? A motion by Representative Baker, second by Representative Estes. We ask and no discussion, so all in favor say aye. Aye. Any
Thank
opposed?
you so much, and the kiddies are going to
Well,
really.
that might be the easiest you've ever had that.
I'm serious. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. As we, before we adjourn, as I mentioned, I wanted us to have more information this time. And so one of the bills that we did at the very end of last session was about due process. And what I remember most about that discussion is that we got completely off topic and talked about a lot of things that had nothing to do that was in the bill. And so what I want to remind you is that the day before, we had actually incorporated 15 things that this committee had asked about into the bill, and that's where we're starting this time. And so I want you to be willing. I would like to call Jerome Dees forward to just give you an update, because we will have this in committee next week. I also want you to know it's a public hearing next week, so we won't be voting on it, but I do want you to get information about what it really does and what it really has nothing to do with. Thank you for being willing to speak with us today.
Absolutely. And good afternoon, committee. I feel like I'm slowly becoming a regular here. It's, I think, 3rd year that I've been here presenting this bill. As Chairwoman Collins said, there have been some kind of questions about exactly what the bill does and does not do. I've got kind of some brief bullet points that I'm happy to handout to you all afterwards, but I'll just kind of run through them just very briefly. This bill does provide a statewide uniform system of procedural due process for students. It would require notice to be given to parents or guardians before the hearing, as well as just a chance at that fair hearing. It would require the hearing be within 10 days of an initial suspension from school, and that suspension would have to be a long-term suspension, meaning over 10 days. Anything under that, there is no change from current law or policy. It would prohibit removal for truancy or tardiness. And it would prohibit children under the age of 12. That's one of the changes that we made from a grade designation to an actual age designation. Prohibit children under the age of 12 from being removed from school unless, and this is another thing that the committee asked for, unless the student endangers the safety of other students, school personnel, or school property over $1,000. And again, this was what we arrived at the end of last session with significant input and help from many members of the education community. So again, I greatly appreciate all of you all's input on that. Now, I do want to point out what the bill does not do. It does not prohibit the use of suspensions or expulsions altogether. It does not, as I said before, require hearings for suspensions under 10 days. And most importantly, it does not remove the final decision-making authority of the local Board of Education. That power and authority still rests with the administrative body that it currently does today. That's all that I have, Chairwoman.
I would love for you to introduce, we have a student that's with us that wanted to say something, and the public hearing's not till the next week, but I ask your indulgence to listen to the student with a prepared statement.
Yes. Hudnall.
Hello, I'm Dr. Matthew Hudnall. This is my wife Allison and my son Jacob. And we're from Tuscaloosa, and we're constituents of Senator Reed and Representative Brignac. And my son Jacob is here today to share his thoughts on HB 188. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the legislature, I'm Jacob Hudnall, and I'm here before you today as a testament to the importance of safeguarding the rights of students within our education system. Last year, I found myself caught in a web of injustice that threatened to derail my entire future due to an overzealous administrator and flawed disciplinary practices in the Tuscaloosa City School System. I was 14 years old, a freshman with an impeccable academic record and an excellent relationship with my teachers. A mistake defined as a minor offense in the Code of Conduct, aggravated by a concussion-induced condition, nearly cost me my educational opportunities and future prospects. The erratic reclassification of a minor offense was being used to circumvent due process protections, denying students like me fair treatment. My parents, relentless in their pursuit of justice, analyzed data, demanded meetings, and consulted with attorneys. Despite overwhelming evidence and research presented, our local school board was unmoved. Only the threat of legal action prompted any response. In their quest for justice for me, my parents were steadfast and refused to turn a blind eye to the pledge of the other students affected by this prejudice. They engaged the support of the Southern Poverty Law Center to ensure that all students in our system had a voice and were not left to navigate these challenges alone. Sadly, countless students lacked the support I had. Marginalized communities are disproportionately affected by flawed disciplinary systems, which can significantly harm their futures. The recent hurried modification of the Code of Conduct by the Tuscaloosa City School System is a glaring example of continued neglect of due process and evidence-based practices. I stand here not just for myself, but for all students affected by unjust actions. Despite this hurdle, I have excelled academically, shown the importance of allowing all students to learn and grow from their age-appropriate mistakes.
Thank you so much for sharing with us today. And I'm so happy that you have parents that were diligent to support you. I know I've been hearing from families all over the state about just inconsistencies. And that's really what we're looking for is a baseline minimum standards. School systems can do what they want after that. And so if everybody will consider, we'll look at this week and consider House Bill 188, there will be a public hearing next week. Thank you so much for being here.
Members after this meeting would like to meet with them, they certainly.
Very good. Thank you so much. If you've got legislation we need to have more information on, please let me know. I do want to keep us as informed as we can be. I really also want to compliment all of you on your brevity today. I stand in amazement. We are adjourned.